Impressionism can be seen as an offshoot from realism. Like the realist, the Impressionist concentrated on conveying a realism or accuracy of subject matter. This is why transitioning from the styles of realism to Impressionism was quite effortless for Edward Manet. Manet's Impressionist work is characterized by an increased looseness of application. Broader, quicker brushstrokes are used to convey a sense of immediacy. This was because Manet started spending more time painting on location rather than in his studio. Instead of concentrating on landscapes like Claude Monet, Edward Manet found more interest in depicting figures from the French middle class. In the 1870s, post-revolutionary, post-industrial revolution France, there was an up-and-coming bourgeoisie, or middle class. We take the concept of the middle class for granted today because it is so prevalent, although in 19th century France it was quite a novelty. Before the revolution, there was a vast divide between extreme wealth and extreme poverty. The revolution helped to redistribute the nation's wealth, and new industrial jobs, such as factory work, allowed more people a steady paycheck with disposable income. With disposable income came more leisure time. Things like fashion and theater became part of the everyday lives for the members of the bourgeoisie. Manet took special interest in depicting scenes from Parisian nightlife. This painting by Manet, entitled A Bar at the Folies Bergère, depicts a barmaid at a popular Parisian nightclub. Patrons would dress up and go out to see and be seen. Pierre-Auguste Renoir was another Impressionist who took interest in painting figures from the Parisian middle class. Renoir took particular interest in the outdoor activities of the bourgeoisie. His paintings are often more light and sweet than those of Manet, as they depict lovers cavorting through grassy fields and friends conversing at outdoor parties. His paintings are very loose and saturated in color, like those of Claude Monet, and he would also have painted on location in plein air, like Monet. Mary Cassatt was a member of the Parisian Impressionists who held the distinction of being both a woman and an American. Cassatt was born in Pennsylvania, although she spent most of her adult life in France. Like Renoir, she used loose brushwork to depict scenes of middle-class leisure. One thing that Cassatt was able to offer that her male counterparts were not is a personal glimpse into the lives of women. This painting, entitled The Bath, is an intimate depiction of the bond between a mother and her child. Edgar Degas was another Impressionist who painted and drew figures from the French middle class. Like Manet, Degas took special interest in depicting Parisian nightlife. One of Degas' most prevalent subjects were performers in the ballet. He enjoyed capturing moments in between performance, either from rehearsal or backstage. He found a challenge in capturing the movement and candidness of these subjects. As I mentioned in reference to Manet, one major trend during the course of modernism has been a progressive flattening of the picture plane. In a painting like this one, entitled Ballet Lesson, the floor plane has very little shift in value to describe the way it changes through space. Furthermore, the floor appears to be slightly tilted forward as if drawn in isometric perspective. If the ballerinas in the back were not holding on, they very well may slide off the picture plane. This skewed perspective was intentional in that it references the tradition of Japanese printmaking. Japanese artists would often use a similar type of perspective to be able to show a clearer view of what's happening in the image. Degas would have seen examples of such prints and would have made a conscious decision to emulate them. Borrowing artistic devices from non-European cultures is another trend that we will see repeating over the course of modernism. One other influence for Degas to flatten the ground plane may have come from the recent invention of the photographic camera. Degas was one of the first artists who took interest in the potential of the camera. As we know from taking our own photos, they flatten three-dimensional space into two dimensions. You can use forced perspective to make two things that are 500 feet away look like they're on the same plane. Unless we read this image as a giant who's been set loose in Paris, we are to assume that the photographer has merely used the flatness of photography to trick our eyes. With the introduction of the camera came the invention in painting of the snapshot aesthetic. As its name implies, this entails painting in a way that emulates the appearance of photographic snapshots. Degas achieves this effect in his painting entitled Street Scene by cropping figures and locations in ways that resemble amateur or spontaneous photography. This effect feeds the realist desire to capture the immediacy of a specific moment.